Mara found it on the third shelf of the thrift store's leaning bookcase, tucked between a dictionary and a romance novel whose spine had forgotten its own title. The envelope was pale blue, worn soft, and sealed with a neat triangle of glue. No address, no stamp. Just her name? It couldn't be hers. The handwriting was older, a looping script that belonged to a century with more patience. She glanced around, half expecting a camera crew to leap out and tell her she was on some elaborate show. The shop was empty except for the clerk, who was dozing with a magazine over his face. She slipped the envelope into her coat pocket, the paper whispering against the lining. At home, she made tea, sat at the small kitchen table, and studied it under the light as though it might confess its origins. She broke the seal. Inside, one sheet of heavy paper folded in thirds. The ink was brown, as if time had been in the bottle. The letter began without greeting. You will find this when you are ready to read it. Not before. You will be tempted to believe this is impossible. That is because you are, for now, accustomed to thinking of time as polite and linear. It is not. Mara felt her shoulders tighten. She read on. You are about to leave something you believe you cannot. You are also about to meet someone who will teach you the difference between a promise and a hope. The first you keep for others. The second you keep for yourself. Do not ignore the third door. There was no signature, no date. She read it twice, 3 times, until the words began to blur into shapes. She tucked it into a drawer, telling herself it was a curiosity, nothing more. And yet, for the next week, she found herself scanning for doors. It was on the 8th day, in the rain, that she saw them. The old train station had 3 entrances, but everyone used the 2 large ones. The third, narrow, recessed, with peeling green paint, was almost invisible between them. She stopped under her umbrella. The letter's ink seemed to hum in her coat pocket, though she hadn't taken it with her. She pushed the door open. Inside, a warm, narrow corridor smelling faintly of cinnamon and machine oil. At the far end, a small cafe had claimed the space between the old ticket office and a forgotten storeroom. Light pooled on mismatched tables. Only one was occupied by a man with a battered leather satchel, sketching on a napkin. He looked up as she entered, smiling like someone who had been expecting her without knowing why. You're early, he said. I don't think so, she replied. They talked for hours, the rain sketching its own story on the windows. He was an architect who had grown tired of building things no one loved. She was a translator who had grown tired of making other people's words behave. They traded pieces of themselves in the easy currency of strangers who feel like something else. When she finally stood to leave, he handed her the napkin. On it, 3 doors, drawn in quick, sure lines. The third was painted in green pencil, a tiny figure stepping through. She almost told him about the letter. Instead, she said, maybe I'll see you again. Maybe, he said, in a way that meant yes. That night, she placed the napkin in the drawer beside the letter. They didn't look alike, but they belonged to the same man. Weeks later, When the man became not just a man but something more dangerous and more tender, she reread the letter and saw it differently. The third door had not been a warning. It had been an introduction. Closing quo. Some messages arrive before we believe in their sender.